data is the new oil. You heard that before. If data is the new oil, what is the equivalent of refineries? I think that would be data centers. Massive shifts happening in the data center space. So what's driving and where's it going to go? Let's look at that. First of all, we have to look at the GCCs. Now, till 2020, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, Bengaluru was the highest contributor to the GCC space, the default destination for GCCs. 35% of the Indian GCCs were located in Bengaluru. In the last 4 years, starting of 2025, that has dropped to 30%. Same thing, similar trends in Mumbai, similar trends in Chennai. However, smaller towns like Pune, smaller towns like tier 2 towns, tier 3 towns are beginning to see an uptick in the GCC count. Now, it is not just the GCCs. When the GCCs go, they also take with them the data centers. Let me explain that and take a look at why the topmost reason for GCCs to shift hinterland is actually cost. And the cost of what? Cost of land. So for example, 1 acre of data center possible land, which is 1 acre of land likely a candidate for a data center in Bengaluru, costs 5 crores. Now, similarly, an equivalent piece of 1 acre of land in Mumbai costs 30 crores. And a similar 1 acre of land in a tier 2 town like Indore costs only 30 lakhs. The difference in pricing, therefore, between Mumbai and Indore is 100x. Between Bengaluru and Mumbai is about 6x. And the difference between Indore and Bengaluru is about 17x. Now, this is a dramatic shift in the operating costs, which were 5 years ago, 6 years ago, making it almost untenable anymore to continue to build data centers in Bengaluru. Now, earlier, we used to have a different reason why locations like Mumbai or Chennai were very important for data centers, simply because international landing stations for the submarine cables used to be there. However, we have now seen a trend where you don't really need to be at those locations, but data centers can happen away from these mega locations because of cost and others. Plus, the fiber optic rings and the fiber optic network to decentralize and deaggregate these large data centers from the metros into smaller towns are now becoming possible. One of the other things that you need to know is the general cost of living in tier 2 towns, tier 3 towns is far more attractive than the large cities. For example, there's a 40% delta between the cost of rent for accommodations for engineers and anybody else in tier 2 towns compared to the large metros. This is on the GCC side. Now let's look at the data center itself and what are the big drivers of data center. That's going to be very important to explain why this shift is happening. If you look at data, one of the biggest reasons for data centers to explode like that has been the insatiable demand for data. Data consumption worldwide has been taken for granted the last 10 years. But if you look at countries like India, India has what you may call an insatiable appetite for data. Currently, I think our consumption is in excess of 25 GB on average per user per month. And experts believe that this will go up to 47 GB in the next 3 to 4 years. Now, if those numbers are real, then we'll see a continued explosion in the data center space. Now, what is causing this extraordinary growth in data? One is some countries by culture and so on are content hungry. We have a very vibrant media and entertainment industry in India. Plus, we look at the event-specific triggers like IPL, for example. Now, if you look at IPL alone, IPL has about 74 matches that are played in a period of 65 or 70 days in India. And that number is going to grow to 84 matches in the next season. I believe in 2026 it will be 84 matches because they're changing the model to a double round robin model something, which means there will be 84 matches over that period. Every match is a 3-hour non-stop streaming session. And notice that most of these games are also happening in smaller towns. You have matches played in Mohali, in Lucknow, in Chandigarh, in Bhubaneswar and Gandhinagar and so on. So the need to move away from a dependency of the large data centers in big urban capitals is even more accentuated because of these trends. Now, you have to understand that a 3-hour streaming session will require other kinds of optimization. Like the CDNs have to do a backup or buffering, local caching at cell sites, local caching, and so that the request for data doesn't need to go back all the way to the central hub and then come again. Now, these are very important parameters, and they're so critical that keep in mind that, for example, in an IPL match, in the last 3 or 4 matches, I've seen that the number of people watching the game is in excess of 300 million, 400 million, 500 million at some point. Now, were these simultaneous or not? We don't know, but if there were, and there could be, because qualifier matches are beginning to be important, we're talking about 500 million simultaneous watching these matches, which means that a huge demand on the overall CDN. Now, from a fiber optics industry perspective, you need to understand that the general thumb rule is that every 100 miles of fiber introduces about 1 millisecond of round trip delay. Now, if that extends even more, like 200 miles and 300 miles and so on, that will be a cumulatively higher number. Now, however, if you notice the type of engagements, like a streaming session or even a payment gateway session, now, even if you go from 1 millisecond to 4, 5, or 6 milliseconds, it's not going to really be earth-shaking, because the streaming as such is an experience that you can handle with 3 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 nanosecond type delays. Now, so this is one of the factors that's now being considered in the redesign of data center architectures, because it's moving away from a hub and spoke to more ring architecture, where you have edge clouds and edge data centers that will offload the load on the central servers, and the data servers or data farms closer to the events will make it easier to buffer and then take care of the locally demanded content, and you don't have to go all the way back to the center. Now, one of the other things you need to, if you look at the overall corporate strategy of large data center providers in India, like Nextra, for example, which is an Airtel data center arm, which I believe in another year or two may be broken away and sold as a separate independent business unit, just like it was for the towers, which I believe was Indus, which is the right thing to do, because that's how you unlock value in large corporate. But that apart, the Nextra is having its own strategy team, which has come up with a plan to completely move the expansion into tier 2 and tier 3 towns. For example, the next set of Nextra data centers will come up in Kochi, will come up in Bhubaneswar, in Jaipur, in Rajkot, and these kinds of things, so that the entire pan-India footprint of data centers is adequately covered, and there's no extraordinary single point of failure in these hubs. Now, this model works very well for smaller towns. For example, if you look at Indore is about 500 to 600 kilometers, maybe another 200 kilometers away, but somewhat equidistant to Delhi, to Mumbai, to Ahmedabad. So why should folks in Indore have to connect to be served by Delhi's data farm or Mumbai data farm? Why not offload that to a local server farm in Indore? So that is the kind of questions that is now beginning to determine the new generation of data centers, where they're going to be located, how are they going to be architected, and so on. Now, if you look at the other side, which is again the cost of running these data centers. One of the big costs of running these data centers is power tariffs. And this is a statewide varying factor, because some states are more friendly and they want to welcome data centers and they have offered better pricing. If you look at Madhya Pradesh and therefore Indore, for example, according to the inputs publicly shared by a new founder, who's Narendra Sen from RAC Bank, which is a next generation data center provider in Indore,